Our objective today is to evaluate the severity of an attack or data breach using relative measures. So our table of contents will work like this. First, we'll talk about what severity means. Then we'll do a short history lesson involving the creeper worm, so that's a pretty cool topic. Next, we'll talk about what the word evaluating means. Thus, we're evaluating severity. We need to make sure we understand both these words in the context of cybersecurity. Then I'd like to point out the personal versus global implications of these attacks and data breaches that we're studying. Next up, we'll use a specific in-depth case study. Once we have that under our belt, we'll do quite a few rapid ratings, and then you'll just pick one of these attacks or breaches to do for your DOL. So we've come a long way from the creeper worm, which was invented or programmed in 1971, to the time of this video recording, which is sometime at the end of August in 2018, when a new website called breachroom.templarbit.com announces that they will start a collection of recent cyber attack or data breaches so that we, the people of the internet, can read about these attacks in a nice standard view. It's sad that these are such commonplace that we have an entire website or websites dedicated to giving us the latest news in this one area. Now, these sites are not totally new, but I just like this one in particular, and you'll see why in a moment. First, let's talk about severity. So what is it? Now, the dictionary says something like it's the quality of being unkind or unpleasant. So what level of quality is the thing that we are questioning today? Let us go with something like the damage or potential damage an attack can have. And I like this little chart here where it's the difference between an urgent critical attack or problem, let's say. You could have a low critical problem you're looking at, or maybe things are non-critical at all, and if they are urgent, then they'll go in this box, and if they are not urgent at all, low priority, and non-critical, it's to the far bottom right side of the box. So I want you to personalize here how many things in your life are in the urgent and critical area. How many times are you in the other areas of this chart? There's no wrong answer to a question like that. So where do we begin when analyzing the severity of an attack? Well, let me start by clarifying what this creeper program did in 1971. The original iteration of it was just movement between Digital Equipment Corporation's PDP-10s, so this is a type of computer, using the ARPANET, so that was like the original, the first internet. So this is the world's first large network of computers. The creeper worm later was modified by Ray Tomlinson so that it would copy itself rather than just move from one PDP-10 to another. This is what made people consider it the first computer worm. There was no damage to data done. It was just an output that read, "I'm the creeper, catch me if you can." A little freaky and weird, especially to see that pop up on your screen if you were not expecting it, but these are the PDP-10s we're talking about. And one of my favorite websites, Hackaday, had this article written by Brian Benchoff about putting a PDP-10 on an FPGA. We have a few FPGAs in class, and I just thought this was a really cool project that somebody randomly took on. In particular, this guy named Wes something, so Control F, West, FW, he said in the comments section, people who've never met the PDP-10 shouldn't assume that it is similar to a PDP-11 just because the numbers are close together. The PDP-10 was DEC's mainframe computer with an architecture featuring 36-bit words. Let's make that bigger so you can see. So at 36-bit words and word addressability, remember nowadays we're working, all the new computers coming out are 64 bits. He goes on to say that getting C to run on the PDP-10 was a major challenge, and I don't think they even ran any flavor of Unix. The Digital Equipment Corporation released both of their major operating systems, TOPS 10 and TOPS 20, for hobbyist use quite a long time ago, and there have been software-based emulators as well. We talk about emulation in my virtual machine lessons. What these emulators are doing, they're running on x86 micro machines, many times faster than the fastest DEC hardware ever made. The original PDP-6, which was DEC's first 36-bit computer, was supposed to have been about 3,000 gates. So we talk about logic gates in class and how transistors are used to make up these logic gates, and how logic gates are at the basis of all programming, or at the very least at the basis of how all computers work. But I just particularly like this comment. If we go to the top here, the article is not very long, and the creator of this, his name's DGCX, and you can see him in the comments below. I don't know much about ChaosNet, but Emacs is my favorite text editor, and it does a lot more than just editing text. So in terms of this creeper worm, for people who are in anime or retro games, this whole concept, the Reaper, was the program written by Tomlinson to travel across the ARPANET and delete the creeper, so it was like the solution, where there's fictionalized accounts of the Reaper in Digimon, and this game called Core War was based on this whole concept. So just a cool piece of internet history there for you. Some cybersecurity history. My think right here is, how severe would you say this creeper worm was? And to give you some closing thoughts on the whole situation, in OS News I found a Q&A with Tomlinson. Right here I put the most interesting question and answer I read in the whole interview. A person asked, "Do you know about how many machines the creeper infected?" And Tomlinson replied, "Infected is a journalistically interesting but inaccurate. Creeper was more like an allergy test than a common cold." Freudian slip there. But to answer the intent of your question, no more than 28 machines could have been visited by Creeper, since that is the number of ARPANET sites running the 10X operating system at the time. And in this context, because you see how big the PDP-10 is, in that context you can understand that when he says sites, he also means computers at the same time. By the way, I tried finding the source code for the creeper, but I could not. I have a video on the Morris worm, which I did find the code for and posted that in the video. But despite all my efforts, I spent a long time trying to find this code, and I just couldn't. So let's start looking at some modern day problems now. We use this website called Breach Room to look at them. What I like most about this website is that they provide what I think to be the essential details of a problem or an attack, aka breach. Suppose not all attacks are breaches, but you're going to see a lot of breaches here. So they give you like a bird's eye view of just the essential details and give you links to follow if you want to read more. But as an average consumer, I can just look at the general problem and then know if I need to make any decisions or if I need to do anything to protect myself. Speaking of which, I wonder, what do you do when you are stressed? How often do you think these cyber attacks or data breaches will affect you? This is one of those lessons where at the end you might be very scared of modern society and scared of the future and how we can maintain our political and economic systems with all these types of breaches, but I'll talk a little bit later as to why I think things are going to be okay. So here's the layout I'm referring to. At first glance, I'm curious what you think of this format. You'll have the parties involved here, the date it was disclosed publicly, the initial discovery, so these two numbers are interesting to evaluate, and then the type of information that was leaked or attacked. And this one doesn't change very often, but this is the attack vector. We talk about hardware hacks in class, so that's how this could be a physical layer instead of just an application layer. But again, we're going to see mostly application layer ones. So that's the bird's eye view right there. Let's go into a focused dive in particular. After that, we'll just run through a ton of standard views and you can just walk away with quite a bit of knowledge. So let's go to our first example. British Airways customer data was stolen from its website. It has a severity of 4. The attack vector is at the application layer. And so I can go down here and click their official statement. And I also like the Guardian article. This will be the area where they put the articles from, well, not from, but related to the attack. Okay, so let's start with the article and then we'll read British Airways official release. So in general, customers were urged to contact their banks right after British Airways released or called the people who were affected. Looks like about 380,000 payment cards had been compromised. Oh, look, you can see a targeted ad to me right there since I live in Colorado. And that was it for the article. It was just a very short one. I read through it, and we'll go over my big takeaways of the article. But first, let's just get a brief look at the official statement they released. So this was last updated yesterday, at least at the time of this video recording. So we're going to look at this on the PowerPoint here, but I just want to draw your attention to the phishing title down here. So that's the primary way the bad guys are going to use the stolen information is through phishing scams. And then there's quite a few FAQs here that's really nice. So you can really dig into those details on your own there. So in the context of looking at this situation, it's easy for me to not be like the angry person. I wasn't affected. I don't live anywhere close to Britain. I can take the more rational approach to analyze the severity of it. And what I'm saying here is that after reading the Guardian article, I had this thought. I was wondering from whose perspective is the severity being measured? Through the customer's eyes? Maybe the corporation's eyes, like British Airways? Is it a mixture of both? Because they're essentially both victims. They both will suffer. So I'm not going to tell you the answer here. I just want you to keep that in the back of your mind as we're analyzing like 5 attacks in a row here. Okay, so a deeper dive into the article. The article said that the data theft, one of the most serious to hit a UK company, deals another blow to BA's reputation. In May last year, the airline suffered an IT disaster when a power surge in its control center near Heathrow caused a global flight interruption and left tens of thousands of passengers stranded. So Heathrow is the name of the airport in London. I've been to it. It's nothing special. But being stranded there sure would be a pain. This wasn't even an attacker. This is just an IT disaster, they're calling it, because of a power surge. At the bottom of this article, though, I saw a headline that read, BA pledges to compensate consumers after data breach. I wonder if they compensated consumers after they were left stranded. I really assume they did. 3 times in my life there's been a problem with the airlines, and I've missed my connecting flight or had some sort of problems with the flight, and they've either put me up in a hotel or paid for me to take another flight, but it's still just a huge inconvenience. Luckily for me, it's never been a monetary inconvenience. I'm sure it's a monetary inconvenience for British Airlines there. So I read about the previous problem they had. Now add to this just a little over a year later, I'm asking questions like, did they compensate after the power surge? How much in actual dollars did this power surge cost? Not including the profits. So sometimes when a company compensates you for your issue you're having with them, it doesn't cost them nearly as much as you might think. So I'm just curious about those numbers. And now I'm curious as to whether this newest breach will cost them even more. So I have all these questions going on in my head when I'm reading articles. I think you should have such questions as well. I think this is what they consider thinking critically. So remember, I'm encouraging you to ask questions as points in our lessons each day. That is, if you're actually in the class. If not, you should still ask questions because asking questions is good for the brain. Now let's do a deeper dive into the press release statement from British Airlines. They said that we are investigating as a matter of urgency the theft of customer data between 22:58 BST, I assume that stands for British Standard Time, on August 21st, 2018 until 21:45 BST, September 5th, 2018 from our website, ba.com, and our mobile app. The stolen data included personal and financial details of customers making bookings and changes on ba.com and the airline's app. The data did not include travel or passport details. I wonder why they put that. Maybe it's important to some people. Anyways, the breach has been reported to the authorities and our website is now working normally. We advise any customers who believe they may have been affected to contact their banks or credit card providers and follow their advice. British Airways will not be contacting they will not be contacting any customers asking for payment card details, but they did contact all affected customers to say sorry, and we will continue to update them in the coming days, so that's good of them. So here's your Think Right Share. The first one is what time did the attack happen in terms of AM, PM? Some of you might not know this military time. For me, all I do is just look at the second number, so ignore this one. So I look at the second number, I minus 2, and that would be a 0. And so this would be like 1058. If this was a 1, I would minus 2, and then I have 9, and then it would be 958. I kind of just ignore that left digit. At least that's my strategy for converting the times. My next question for you is, what do you imagine the banks will advise? I think that's kind of a no-brainer, but curious to see what you say. Another question, what form of attack will the hackers likely use? If you remember, I said that about 30 seconds ago. And then here's a judgmental question for you to answer. Do you believe that this response right here was appropriate? Is there any room for improvement that you could see? If you don't go into technology as a future career, maybe you'll be involved in business one way or the other and can thus advise the business on how to respond to cyber attacks, all because you decided to take this class or watch this video. Okay, so we're about to do our rapid research. Let me start with the one we've already become familiar with. So British Airways, it's a level 4 attack, September 6th to the initial discovery we're not sure of. It was at the application layer, and here's the leaked information. So the Think Right shares you're about to answer like 5 times in a row look like this. Do you agree with this rating and why? You can answer this in all kinds of different ways as long as you're justifying your answer. Mine, I said, though I did not see the number of people affected. Okay, I didn't see that number here, though I saw the number in that Guardian article, right? It was 380,000 people or something like that. So though I did not see the number of people affected here, 15 days seems like quite a while, and financial information is very important, especially if we are talking about the 4 most important pieces of credit card information. And so I'm relying on personal experience here. I know that basically to buy anything with a credit card, you need the name on the card, the card's number, the expiration date, and the CVV on the back. I don't even know what CVV stands for, but I know it's important. All right, so here's another situation. If you need to take a break before moving on to digest that information, make sure you pause. There's a situation with a company called Atlas Quantum, and the severity is only 2, so it's pretty low. There's the initial discovery that we don't know about yet, but in terms of when it was disclosed, that was on August 25th this year. Remember, this website just got up and running, so I'm only seeing 2018 dates so far. It's a site I plan on checking frequently, though, just out of curiosity, if not, so I have new information to teach you guys in this cybersecurity class. So for the company Atlas Quantum, what happened? They leaked customer names, phone numbers, email addresses, and account balances. And so on a lot of these articles, you get to see a giant map, and then they'll put a headline. So the headline for this attack was called Hackers Sell Data of 130 Million Chinese Hotel Guests on the Dark Web for 8 Bitcoin. This Atlas Quantum, if it's not the hotel, it must be the technology company the hotels use in order to get reservations and whatnot. After spending a second looking at the cool map here, do you agree with this rating right here and why? Here's our next one, another Chinese name and related to hotels, but this one's a severity 4. It was disclosed on August 29th. It was discovered on August 29th. That's always nice when the company just right away accepts that something bad happened, hopefully giving customers more time to react and protect themselves. This says the attack vector was a data breach, so it's not using one of the OSI layers. Maybe that's because they don't know what layer was actually the vector in this context. Similar to the last one, we're looking at phone numbers, email addresses, bank accounts. So bank account numbers, I assume, and then the hotel booking details. So maybe that's the reason for the higher severity. I don't know. You tell me. Do you agree with this rating? Right, our next one, it's a T-Mobile one with the 3 severity. Discovered August 20th, but disclosed or announced 4 days later. What happened? Customers' names, billing zip codes, phone numbers, email addresses, and account numbers for T-Mobile apparently was leaked. I wonder if this is the T-Mobile's headquarters here in Seattle. A long time ago, I used to live right here in Bellevue. Before then, in Everett. All right, next up is a GoDaddy company, and this is a very minimal severity rating. Disclosed on August 10th, and what was leaked? Confidential business information And in terms of GoDaddy, it looks like they're stationed out here in Phoenix. There's Glendale, Peoria. I've been to Lake Pleasant. Phoenix is way too hot for me. But the title of the headline, Sensitive Data on 31,000 GoDaddy Servers Exposed Online. And having servers in Arizona where it's already hot, that must be tough. I read somewhere that their energy is cheap because of the solar power. Either way, do you agree with this rating? Why or why not? Essentially asked to infer what it means when it says confidential business information. Okay, our last one. This one is a Department of Homeland Security, and it goes up to 4. I've looked throughout the entire website. I could not see anything higher than 4 dots. And this one I thought would make it. I mean, this is national security, but maybe only Equifax has hit that highest rating so far. Though Equifax is not on here. I think I'm going to be on the lookout for as I visit this website frequently to see if anybody could get the 5 dots. It's going to be a goal for any company. So this occurred on January 3rd. So this is actually the first entry Breach Room has. And what was released was social security numbers, dates of birth, positions, grades, and duty stations there in Washington, D.C. So do you agree with this rating? Why or why not? At the end of this lesson, I think you can go through this website with either a wow, curiosity look or an angry, geez, people are irresponsible type of glare. This guy right here, right? But I prefer the former here. And I think what if we did have better security in society? The cost of these problems could probably trickle down to us consumers. The world could be a much more efficient place, which could mean we all have an easier, more fulfilling life. So that's one of my passions for cybersecurity, is to create this situation for us all. But in the meantime, until we can get there, I just really like this quote. There is freedom when you realize that you're just a witness to all that is happening. And at the end of the day, I like this meme. This is proof right here that things can always get worse. In the midst of a flood, this house is on fire. I sort of think that the attacks we've gone over in class are only going to get worse. So after a lesson like this, what IB attribute do you think it connects to, or what emotional concept do you think it connects to? I'm leaning towards reflective, since we reflected on several attacks and their severity rating. Here's our DOL. I accidentally, but now on purpose, would just leave this. I realize I left the essential question from an older lesson here. But the question says, why is speed important in networking? I think now that we've looked at many attacks that you could maybe answer this question in a totally different context now. So I'll just leave that there. In terms of what you need to do on the DOL, pick one of the attacks from Breach Room to report back on. If you're short on time, go ahead and use one of the ones we went over, or I would like you to go to the Breach Room website. Remember, breachroom.templarbit.com. There it is again, right there. So once you find an attack, I want you to just put it into this list however you could fit it. So either create your own list, or you can use the one I started. The Creeper Worm is not very severe at all. In second place for today, British Airways Power Surge. That wasn't really an attack or a data breach, so maybe I need to get that off the list. I mean, it did strand people compared to this British Airways financial information leak, which is going to financially impact people. This is one of my easiest DOLs I've ever made. All you have to do is just throw in the headline into this list. That way I can see that you're analyzing, you're evaluating the severity of either an attack or a data breach relative to other data breaches.